Okay, incredible, awesome, amazing people. Thanks for coming to chapter 6B. We'll continue on jobs. Anyone have one? God gave me that job of motivational media, and it was amazing. It ended up being where I was in charge of 3 states, California, Nevada, and Arizona. I drove a lot of places, and mostly in California, but I went all over. And what was really amazing that summer is that every time we needed money, I mean, there was just about out of money and just about out of groceries. We'd go to the mailbox and a check would be there. That happened over a half a dozen times. So it got to where we knew it was the day that we needed it, and we'd go to the mailbox and it was there. It was just supernaturally amazing by God. And also, I purchased an email program where I could send all kinds of emails to schools, and I mean, I sent them by the hundreds. You know what? I never got one of those jobs, not one. Every single one, the company called me and said a school called in my area, so I got it. I never, except till later, and I'll tell you about that later, about saving our home. But anyway, we were receiving these checks, and all of a sudden we needed one, and it wasn't in the mailbox. We didn't know what was going on. That's the faith we had. We said something's wrong because we should have received it. I called the company, and ended up being delivered to a gentleman who was a former pastor who was also, or used to do some shows. He didn't do them anymore, but he worked in the office, and he took the check himself and cashed it. And so I had a real sit-down talk with him, and he made up for it and scheduled a week's worth of jobs way up north in California, about 12-hour drive, way up in the mountains. It was a week's worth of work, but it made a lot of money. And so I said, okay, I'll do that. Now, it's kind of sad if you think about it, since the money was already gone and I had earned it. But you know what? You learn from God to forgive and move on and love folks. And it takes testing and practice, at least for me. Anyway, we did that. I went to those jobs, got those done. But let me tell you the experience of going there. Now, this was about, some of the school just started coming back in. And so I had to give back that newer van and take one of the very oldest vans they had. This van had over 200,000 miles in it. The windows would not roll all the way up. There was no power anything. There was no radio. The brakes, anytime I slowed down to stop anywhere, it was a loud, screeching, metal-to-metal noise. The tires, every tire, you could see metal on them. Now you can see how unsafe this is with a 1-ton van stock full of very heavy equipment. Yet, you know what? Again, that was the only thing we had. The company didn't have funds to fix it. I didn't have funds to fix it. And so we prayed, and off I went on a 12-hour drive. I mean, in the natural, that makes absolutely no sense, no wisdom at all. But I just knew it would be okay. And that's about all I can tell you. I wish I lived in that level of faith all the time. I have to say, ashamedly, I do not. But it's great to be there, I'll tell you. So going all the way up there, got to one place way up the mountains. Right when I turned off the lights and pulled over, it was pitch black with the trees. You couldn't see in front of my face. Interesting turns and twists in that highway, but I did find where I was going and had a successful week of shows. I'll briefly say it. One night, now we didn't have TV for over 2 years. We were at a place we just didn't want TV, didn't want to interfere with us. Seeking God and all the junk that's on TV, and that was years ago. It's extremely worse now. I was pretty excited to see a TV show on the in the hotel room, and just flipping through channels and HBO, and up came the show, and I don't recall what it's called now, but it was a show with Keanu Reeves, and I believe he was an attorney, and he was literally trying to be used by the devil. I only saw parts of the show because what I saw was enough. I could feel God grieved that I even watched the part that I did, and what I will say is I was grieved. I prayed, I repented in tears, and yet the next day, the shows I had went terrible. It was awful. Everything went wrong. I don't want to attribute it to seeing that, but all the other shows went well. And I've had that kind of experience since then. You know, you just don't mess with God, or you don't let the enemy in. Anyway, that did get off. I got home, got paid well, and was all caught up. The next thing was that all through the summer, you know, it was slow. It was California. Schools aren't in summer there. They weren't at that time, very few, and so the jobs always paid enough to take care of our bills and take care of our food, but did not pay our mortgage payment. I'd never been behind on a rent or mortgage payment in my entire life. More of the humbling process was involved, I'm sure, and I got 2 months behind and some notices, that kind of thing. And a gentleman called me, which I had done a few of his shows in the summer, that owned Shakey's Pizza. And he was always at the shows. He was the only person ever that paid me after the show. All the rest took some time before I received it because they dealt with the schools and the red tape and so forth. In fact, getting through to the schools to even get a program took many days or weeks usually. At least that's what they told me. Again, I never got them. So anyway, this gentleman called me, and I was telling Chris, you know what, it's not going to be very long here in about a week or so, because we had got the third month's late notice that they said they were going to foreclose. And I was talking to her about that, but I received an email from this gentleman saying, could I book 2 weeks worth of shows, double per day? And I instantly heard the voice of God say, your mortgages will be paid up with this. So I told Chris. Now, in the natural, again, it makes no sense. Even if I did the shows, I booked them right away, which was impossible since I never booked any the whole 3 months I've been working, 3 or 4 months. And and even if I did get them scheduled, they'd be scattered. Of course, you can't just book them all in a row. They're difficult getting through the schools, again, and through all the red tape and the proper people you need to speak with. But he told me that, and I told Chris, and I felt, great, this is done. So I emailed him and asked if it was possible to get, if it was anywhere possible I could get half the money up front as I was scheduling. I started calling the schools in the districts that he asked all over. And within 1 hour, I scheduled all the shows. And they were in consecutive days, and they were back to back. It was absolutely miraculous and supernatural. Everyone I called, I got a hold of someone. They said yes, yes, yes. I asked who I could speak to at the next school. They told me. I mean, it's never happened to me before then and never happened after. I never received an answer back from my email because I did send them that these schools were scheduled. What I did receive just a few days later, before I even did one show, I received the full check for every single show. Praise God. I never heard from the man. I did the shows. They went great. Our mortgage was paid up. School continued where I got more and more shows through fall and winter, and had many, many experiences which I don't have time to share with you now, but would love to anytime. Miraculous things that God did. Anyway, that is great for chapter 6b, and we'll move on to chapter 7. Thanks so much. Have a tremendously blessed day.